And welcome to the Modern Dad Council. I got with me today Jay Forty, Larry Hagner, Thomas Pfeiffer, and Tommy Maloney. So, welcome, dads. How was your week?
Busy? Good. Everybody getting ready for big holidays?
Yep, Thanksgiving's coming up. So this week we're gonna kind of go over, what it means to be a modern dad in the sense of education and dealing with your kids in school. So this week I had an organization at my school that got started called DADS, and it is Dads of. Wait, I gotta read it because I always forget it. Dads of Academically Dedicated Students. and so everything on with this program is all about getting the dads involved with their academics at the school. So coming in and volunteering and doing different stuff. So I thought it'd be a great topic for the show today is to kind of talk about different things that we can do as dads. We've talked about mentoring, and so I wanted to kind of elaborate that in our role as dads in the education of our kids. So does anybody want to kind of start off with that topic in mind?
I got a story to share. Can I start with the story?
Most definitely.
So I come from a big Italian family, six kids, and I'm third. And so we were, not a wealthy family, so we didn't go out to eat very often because our parents said, first there's eight of us, and that's a lot of people to take out to eat. And we're Italians, our food's better, so why go out? And so I remember one time we did go out, and so my dad was a real. He never missed the teachable moment. That's the only reason I'm telling the story. So picture this. So we got eight people going out to dinner. We go to what he calls a smorgasbord. Okay, so it was a buffet. And so six kids get dumped there. We get our table, and then we run to this big table where all the food is. And we start piling all this food on these plates. And my dad whistles to us, calls us back to the table, and he says this. So here's a lesson. He says, okay, here's how it's going to be. We're going to walk around this big table three times. Don't touch a thing or you're in the car. So we never went out, so who's going to take the chance of getting loved into the car? While you're doing that, I want you to notice everything that's on this table. The third time, after you walk around this thing, third time, you can take one small plate and you can try something you've never tried before. And he said, if you take, I know you eat all the time, you're in the car. And he said, I promise you this, that if at the end of this, I guarantee you will find something that you love that you never knew you loved. So if you would do this for me, you would then see that there's a whole lot more in your world that you need to try before you say this is what I like versus this is what I don't like. And our whole life with him and I'll call him a modern dad. He was somebody that was interested in making sure that life became our classroom. That we were always watching for the opportunities to learn something that was going on.
Yeah, very cool. And it's about being more present in the moment too, right? And
Yeah,
being
because all
open
your
to those
information,
opportunities.
yeah, your information's happening in this moment, and if you're not tuned into that moment, what information and what lessons are you learning, and how can we as modern dads be a little bit more present, learn, and then help our kids see what's going on in this moment?
Yeah, I know for myself at least, before I got introduced to you, Jay, and all of the material that you teach to really, it helps you to be present and be more open. I was always wondering, how is it that I can mentor my kids better? How do I really teach them in a more, in a better way, a more effective manner? And that's what I was missing is that being present in every moment so that you are open to the opportunity for that time to do that mentoring or coaching or whatever the situation calls for, right?
Yeah, and I think what it does is it shows us in that moment, it shines a mirror on us, and we get to see ourselves in it. And then we start to share with our kids a little bit about our unique perspective of that moment. And I think it does two things. One is it shares a little perspective of who we are as parents and people. And then the second part, I think what it does is it lets our kids realize that we should interpret these moments ourselves. Mine isn't the only way to look at it. But what do you see in this moment? That I saw this, what do you see? and maybe that gives them permission to have their own perspective.
And not being that reactive parent, but that responding parent, right?
Right.
Yeah, I have two things to add to that. One, I think, sharing with your kids stories from your own childhood is so important. They really want to know, what was it like, I mean, back in the Stone Age or whatever, but, they do want to know your family experience growing up. What was it like when you were a kid? When you were, like, my son's in middle school now, what was it like when you were in middle school? What were some of the challenges and things that you faced, and you can talk about those things with them and kind of bring the generational thing together. But also to your points, Jay and Chris, about being present, so often we think of whatever it is that we're doing as getting to the next thing. Okay, I've got to get my kids to school, I've got to make dinner, I've got to do this so that I can do some other thing, so that I can go check my emails, so that I can do whatever it is. And it's hard, but if we can just focus on, no, this is the activity of my life. Driving my kids to school right now is the activity. Making the dinner is the activity. That's the moment that I want to be present in and enjoying and getting the most of. It does two things. It recenters you, and it also enables you to drop all of the resentment or anger or impatience that you're feeling in that moment. Because instead of saying, I've got to get this done because I've got to go do something else, you're saying, let me just step back and actually try to enjoy this thing that I'm doing.
Yeah, that's absolutely. And that's what I found too, is that, when I'm upset or I got something going on with me in my mind, and then my kids being a little crazy, it's like, knock it off, quit running around, quit being noisy, quit being a kid.
And they call you on it every time. Okay, yeah. You notice.
What's your problem, Dad? Like, what do you mean? It's not me, it's you. It's kind of the same thing when it comes with my son, trying to get him to do his homework. It's like, okay, when you come home from school, I want you to sit down and do your homework. And you look at his homework, he's maybe got a half hour worth of homework there. But instead of getting focused and worrying about just knocking it out, he's doing this, kind of staring off to space. I'm like, hey, you got to get with the program, dude. Get focused. Be present in the moment in what you're doing. And, sometimes I find myself getting ticked off, like, why won't you just sit there and do it, instead of, kind of understanding, he really doesn't want to be doing this right now. So what are some ways that I can approach the situation and kind of coach him into getting his homework done, as opposed to yelling at him for not doing it? Right?
Can I offer something that I heard this week, and I hadn't heard this before? I had a podcast guest this week, Dara Feldman, who's this Disney's Teacher of the Year, and she just had this really clever phrasing. And one of the phrases she shared was, "Be curious, not furious." I just really like that. So when a kid's doing something, maybe the right example or the behavior is to, so it's exactly like, Chris, what you were talking about. How do we step into a coachable moment in that, where we know that it's going to take a modern dad now needs to be really aware of our own self well enough to say, hey, I know what I want to do here, which is scream, the furious part. But the better thing might be, I wonder why this kid can't focus. And so the curious part then forces you to go ahead, forces us to make it a learning event by asking some questions and throwing the accountability back to the kid. I just love that. Curious or furious. I had never heard that. I think that's brilliant.
Did you want to go ahead, Larry?
Yeah, so I've got a good example about homework. So I think Chris brought up a great point about homework, because I think doing homework, I think it creates an opportunity for us to do some coaching ourselves. And it's also a good way to maybe instill some work ethic in the kids, and also maybe instill the opportunity to never give up, to stay on task. So just sharing a personal story of my own, I struggled terribly in school when I was in grade school. So much so that I failed 8th grade. I failed 8th grade and had to repeat 8th grade. which was humiliating. I was just one of those kids that I was so distracted. I mean, I was probably undiagnosed with ADHD. I mean, I think that's probably overdiagnosed, but at the same time, I didn't understand how I learned. And it wasn't until I got into high school, so I did 8th grade twice. I ended up getting good grades. I got good grades enough to actually get me into a college prep high school. And it wasn't until I was a junior in high school that I really figured out how I learned. And the best way for me to learn was literally to keep my head down in class, not look up at the teacher, and just take notes, because I was an audible learner. And if I watched the teacher, I got distracted by movement, everything else going on in the room. But if I could hear the words and write them down and then watch myself write them down, that's how I retained everything. Now, what I've noticed with my 8-year-old is I think a lot of times the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. My 8-year-old, we held him back. He actually did 1st grade twice. Same struggles I see with him with homework and trying to learn. And I see him so frustrated with homework. And it's because it's like there's so many words, and with math, there's so many numbers. So it's refreshing to me, because I remember growing up and my mom getting just frustrated, just getting so mad at me because I couldn't understand my work. But the thing that I've done different with him is I'm more patient with him. And since he and I are wired very similar, it gives me a good opportunity to help create more of a shorten that learning curve for him, because I notice, like, if I'm like, okay, if I was 8 years old, how would I do this problem the easiest? And then I do that with him. It's like a light bulb goes off, and it's so refreshing to see that light bulb go off, and it makes homework more of a bonding experience versus a task that we have to get through. And that's all I have to say about homework.
Well, I mean, Larry, I think that's a perfect curious versus furious situation. That without that awareness or that presence, that can just win the frustration award. But if, the bigger part of us says, hey, I wonder why that's going on, rather than this kid's just trying to shirk his get out of his work, it's not that. It's that there's something going on, and, by taking time, you could correlate the fact that maybe it's in your genes, and here's how you figured it out. Here's an opportunity to share that and see if there's a way that just by asking questions, this kid can feel supported and welcomed into the process instead of just frustrated, because we know how that's got to feel for them when they're overwhelmed by too much data.
Right.
Right, and when if you think about it, if you put yourself in their shoes, when you get home from work, do you want someone to tell you that you have to sit down and spend an hour answering the emails from work that you didn't get to during the day?
Really good analogy.
Your kid gets home from school. They've been told all day long by teachers what to do and what they have to do, and to sit here and to sit there and to behave in this certain way. And they need a little bit of time. I mean, every kid is different. Some kids are going to be sort of really self-directed and driven and say, no, I want to sit down and get my homework done, or whatever. But a lot of them, they just want to chill out. They just want to, watch a show or do something for a half an hour or have some cookies and just, I'll get to it. But for some of them, going back to work is the last thing they want to do.
Right. And that's kind of part of it too, right? Finding the right time for your kid to do the homework.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's not when they come home. Sometimes it's after dinner, or.
We could do a whole other show about finding those windows, the right window during the day or evening or whatever it is, when it's just right for your kid to do whatever it is that you need them to do.
Mm-hmm. Tommy, did you have something that you wanted to say?
Well, it's funny because, listening to all of you about your kids, it's funny because my son, up until he started basketball a couple weeks ago, he was that kid. As soon as he got home, he would get his homework done and get it all going. My oldest bonus daughter, she's the same way. As busy as she is, oh my gosh, I don't know how that kid does it. She is, not just school and student council, but she was in a lead in a play recently. My wife's younger daughter, my other bonus daughter, she is just like you were saying, Thomas. She comes home, TV's on, she's making popcorn, just relaxing. You know, I wouldn't be surprised down the road she'll have a martini, things like that, because that's how she is wired. And it's just so funny, you know. I truly mean the three kids really should be brother and sister blood, because I just see the dynamics between the older one and my son, who's technically the youngest. Those, you know, you have the oldest one mentality and you have the only child mentality, and they're very similar. And again, Becca comes home and she's just relaxing and watching the stupidest shows, but again, that's how she is wired. And, you know, I look at my son, and unfortunately, you know, I'm not in the same household, but his time management skills, I want him to write a book to help me out with my time management skills, because mine suck. And it's just so amazing seeing, our kids, and, you know, again, having the two just come in, do their homework, and, you know, and then me, Becca and I are probably wired the same way, going, just like you were saying, Thomas, the last thing I want to do coming home from work is wanting to flip on the computer and do anything. So it's just fun to watch. I mean, I'm sorry, but who needs cable when you got kids like that to watch?
That is a great quote. And, you know, when you mention the popcorn, or, you know, the martini down the road, I mean, think about the rituals that we all have in our day that soothe us, that are comforting, you know, so, you know, whether it's stopping at a certain place for your cup of coffee, or whether it's, you know, doing something when you stop working, our kids need and rely on the same things to feel that sense of safety and comfort. So if it's milk and cookies, you know, or whatever it is when they come home, or watching that favorite show for a certain amount of time, that's soothing and comforting to them, and it can prime them for then moving on to the thing like homework that is not soothing and comforting.
Can I add something? Maybe the thing that we need to throw out there too as a modern dad is that, you know, education doesn't have to look like school. So when we're talking education, and one of the things that, you know, I remember most about that story about going out to eat, partly because we finally went out to eat, was that it was meant to be show up as you are. There's some guidelines that I want you to watch for, but all your information is going to come from what's going on in your world. And I wondered if, you know, that we respect and help our kids understand that, you know, that your middle bonus daughter there, Tommy, this is right for who she is, and she should know it, so that part of her understanding of how to move through her world includes this, because it's what gives her the ability to show up to the other things. And if we did the school's job of saying, no, here's the way you do it, come home, get your homework done, that's what kids do, you know, to give them some ability to have a choice in the process doesn't mean you don't hold them accountable, but it means they start to see their unique way of navigating that world, so that when you're not there, they have seen, so that they can be a success. Instead of, you know, here's the one size fits all, everybody does this, and when we know that's just not true.
Well, you know, to your point, Jay, you know, I think that's, you know, me personally, you know, my frustration with the whole school system is that you do try to put in that round peg in the round hole. That, you know, to Larry's point, you know, he learned differently. We all learn differently, and it's the education system. Again, in my opinion, just seems that it's still the cookie cutter way of doing it, and not letting, you know, kids actually be able to express themselves, and again, have the teachers, you know, understand, you know, we all learn differently. And so, you know, again, using my kids as an example, you know, 2 out of 3 seem to learn very similar, and then the one doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that's how they learn differently.
You're right, and unfortunately, the only kind of individualized learning that the schools offer is if your kid gets diagnosed with some issue or problem or whatever, you know, or has a special need that is evident, then you can get an IEP and you can have that going. But, you know, yes, in an ideal world, I mean, every student would to the degree possible, have some kind of individualized education plan or some kind of consideration for that. And then the only other quick thing that I would add to that is, we can sit there and we can say to our kids, sit down, do your homework, get it done. If you actually look at some of the work that they're given, they're telling you that it's boring or they don't want to do it. Oh my God, so much of it is truly boring, horrible work. That just who should be made to do this? It's awful.
Right. I got to jump in here real quick with this Dads of Academically Dedicated Students program that my daughter's principal set up in the school. It's similar to the Watchdogs. Have you guys
Dads
heard
of Great Students.
Yeah. So It's similar to Watchdogs, but Watchdogs focus is mainly on bullying. And one of the things that Alex, the guy that put together this program, said that he had a long conversation with a couple of dads involved in Watchdog, and their focus on bullying, at the Monroe Road Elementary School that my daughter goes to, they don't have a bullying problem. So, and Jay, I know we have a pretty good solution for that as well. But at any rate, this program is trying to get the dads into the school to give the teacher a little bit more assistance. So when they can divide the classrooms up into smaller groups to give them a little bit better of that one-on-one attention. And so then that teacher gets an opportunity to work with the students in a smaller groups. My daughter's classroom, they call it something fives. So they have 5 different groups that they break up into. And so there's 25 students in the classroom, so 5 groups of 5. And it gives the teacher some great one-on-one or one-on-5 attention to each of the kids. So the purpose of these types of programs is to get us dads into the schools volunteering. And he had statistics, and it was like 86% of the moms volunteer at some point throughout the year to come into the school and help out in the classroom. And dads was down like 8%.
Yeah.
So, in this show, and as we're talking about this subject, I really want to challenge the dads out there that are watching to get into your kids' schools. The school wants you there. As much as you might not believe that or think that, it is true. The school wants you there because you being there adds that extra support. It gives that extra help, and you can really impact. I volunteer every Tuesday, so I get to see the impact that I make just being there for an hour every Tuesday. Those kids love me. I'm high-fiving them all the time. Well, high-fiving them down here because they're 5, but
They're tiny.
Yeah. And then other kids in other classrooms see me, so when they're walking through the hall, they're like, "Hi," and I'll be like, so I introduce myself. "Hi, I'm Chris. I'm Isabella's dad," and introduce Isabella to him. And just now I'm starting to connect with kids in other classes that have no relationship to my daughter whatsoever, but I'm making an impact on not just that classroom, but the school in general. It's just huge.
It's huge in a couple of different ways, because it's so important to have male role models in those schools, because so many of the teachers are women.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, that's good. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's funny you mentioned Watchdogs, because I've been a watchdog at my son's school. And you're right, Chris. It's very frustrating because actually they dropped the Watchdog program last year because, why? Whoa, as I get excited about that. Because there were not enough dads. And it was very frustrating because, very similar, Chris, I was volunteering at my son's school, a couple times a week. And since they dropped the Watchdog program, all I did was, which worked for me really well, was I spent my volunteer time in the gym with my son's physical education teacher, because I just felt that was a better use of my time. And they just brought back, I just heard they brought back Watchdogs this year. But again, the problem is, just like you said, Chris, there are not enough male role models. It doesn't have to be a dad. It can still be, bonus dads, grandfathers. The bottom line is we as a modern dad, we do need to get more involved in that type of arena, really.
And I think one thing that helps with that is there's a mindset, I think, among a lot of men that it's not really appropriate to take time off from work to do that. That if you say to your boss or whatever, well, I need to be out this morning because there's something at my kid's school or whatever it is, that maybe that's going to be frowned upon. Or, I think a lot of men, they don't even ask because it doesn't even occur to them,
Right.
because they don't see that as as okay, as a completely valid thing to take an hour or 2 hours or a morning or whatever off. The extent of it is, well, maybe, I think a lot of guys probably leave early sometimes because they're coaching teams or whatever, and that's a little bit more accepted because it's sports and it's kind of like, the guy thing. But to take a morning off to read a story in your kid's class or whatever, we need to change the mindset so that becomes a more integral part of a man's life and of a father's life.
I think we're in a workplace that accommodates that. I mean, we've got a younger generation starting to go in, and so some of the boomer myth of what you do in a job is starting to change. And we have a lot of technology jobs that do not require you to physically be someplace. So, and there's a host of IT people who work at home. It just hasn't crossed their viewpoint yet. So I think, Thomas, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's I didn't know I didn't know. I didn't know I could do that because it was never in my model that this is the way a dad might help out. But if I look at my schedule today, I want to. I have time. I could make it work, but I just never put those three pieces together. And maybe we're the poke that says, hey, think about it, because just to show up and be at your kid's school, I mean, I remember doing this with my kids, and they were as proud as could be that I was in their school. They came running to me, they walked around, they introduced me, and you feel like a celebrity. So if your job doesn't make you feel like a celebrity, go hang out at your kid's school for a little bit. You'll walk away with a trophy.
Yep, absolutely.
It is, and there's nothing like one of those other kids coming up to you and saying, hi, Isabella's dad.
Right. Yeah, that's our identity. We lose our names, we become our kid's dad name.
Yeah.
So.
Larry, did you have something?
I think that's so powerful. Yeah, I think that's so powerful to go up and have lunch with your kids. And the reason being is because I think that we have a brief window of time when we are able to go up and have lunch where they want us to be up there. So I think it's important, even if it's, maybe once a month, or, if your schedule is demanding once every quarter, just something to where you are present and it's something different for them, and it's, you're in their world. You get to be in their world. The kids are constantly in our world, but you get to be in theirs. I mean, that's what they're immersed in for 8 hours a day is in that school. So when you can be a part of that, and see things from a different perspective, but I think it creates a great memory. It creates a good bonding memory with your kids that, hey, my dad took time out of his schedule to come up and have a meal with me every now and again and sit with my friends.
Yep, and school field trips too. To be the dad that rides on the bus. That just your kids just talk about it forever because most dads won't, or don't, or can't, or whatever the reason is. So to click that in too, to say all of these are options. And I wonder if schools are making an intentional. And my kids are in their 20s, so it's been a while. But I wonder if the younger kids' schools are making this intentional effort to bring dads in. Do you find that? Any of you that have younger kids?
Well, I do that, Jay. Exactly. I volunteered, chaperoned on several of my son's field trips because why? Because my dad did it. And that's a valid point. And so, yeah, I do that. To Larry's point, it was one of those, I didn't realize, hey, I can go to my son's school and go have lunch with him. And I've done that. I've actually brought him lunch because I remember as a kid, there was one kid in school whose mom would bring him McDonald's like once a week, and we all hated him for that. And I wanted my son to be that hated kid as well, so I would bring him Subway or Chick-fil-A, and the kids. And again, like you are all saying, you are the kids' heroes. They're all going, "Hey,
Yeah.
bringing in other food other than the stuff we're eating." So, I love volunteering at my son's school. I love being the chaperone, and most of the time, as far as chaperoning goes, I'm not the only dad, but when I volunteer at my son's school, I'm usually the only dad there.
What about writing notes in your kids' lunches? So I'm they call it a logophile. So I love words and I like writing poetry, and I would try and send a couple of ridiculous kind of Dr. Seussy rhymes in having girls. Maybe you wouldn't do that with a boy, but having girls, they'd get their lunch and they look forward to reading a little message, and so I don't know what possessed me to do it, but I know that they talked about it, and I know that they still talk about it, and so just a minute, just to say, hey, I was thinking about you.
Yeah, personalizing is great. Even if you just write their name on their lunch bag, and they see it in your handwriting or whatever it is. I don't do it anymore because my kids are a little older, but I would draw on their lunch bags these little smiley faces with little curly hair around them and stuff. And the reason I did that is my mother did that for me. She would draw the face, and it's that connection. They see it and like, oh, there's mom, there's dad. You're sort of present even when you're not present.
My ex-wife's mom passed away when she was 8 years old, and that was something when she got into high school that her dad did. Is he'd just fill out a little Post-it note every morning, "I love you," something else, and then he'd stick it on her coat or backpack, something like that. She still to this day cherishes. She has those notes from high school. 18 years ago, I don't know, it's been a long time, and she still has them. So those things mean a lot, and we don't really think of it. But look at, my ex-wife, perfect example. Still to this day carrying around these notepads whenever she moves and everything else. Crazy.
Another thing I want to throw out there, because obviously there are dads who they work far away from their kids' schools. You just don't have the opportunity on a day-to-day basis to be in there. Look for a way you can somehow blend or relate your work to something with your kids' school. One thing I did, since I edit a local online website in my town that reports on town news, and my son was in the school play, I decided to write a series of articles about the play. So I was supporting him and supporting the school and kind of bringing that all together, and it gave me a reason to go and watch a rehearsal and things like that. So, it's not a perfect example, but if you do have a job that keeps you away, but there's some way, maybe you can come in and make a presentation in the school that relates to something about your job or what you do, just to kind of look for innovative ways to be able to push in.
Can I ask you, can kids have phones in school today?
My son's school it's a big no.
I was just wondering if you can do a FaceTime in the middle of the day. I'm just wondering, because obviously that wasn't technology when I was a kid or when my kids were little. I just wondered if you could FaceTime somebody in the day just saying, hey, I'm thinking about you. I don't know if they had access to phones or not.
Not during the school day. At the middle school, my son and his classmates, they're allowed to bring their phones, but they're not allowed to use them or access them during the school day. It's really for like after school when they're looking for you in the parking lot or something.
Okay, we'll skip that then. Can I throw something out that's 180 degrees different than this? So we were talking about the parents or the dads being the educator. What if there's a whole lot of information about the kids being the educator? So John Kabat-Zinn is this great guy that he's a writer, and he does a mindfulness-based stress reduction clinic up at UMass Med in Worcester, Massachusetts. And he he says this thing, and he's a great writer. He has this course called Mindfulness for Beginners as well. It's a great book and a great audio program. But he said, that maybe one of the reasons why we have kids is that they're our little Zen masters. They're kind of dropped in on us, and their goal is to help us remember the things that we forgot, about being a kid. So our deepest and best and most creative selves are generally the ones that we had when we were younger. And we forgot, as we're talking about school, did this very good job of saying, here's what we do, here's who you are, here's what you believe, here's all this stuff. And it chased away some of the things that really made us different and unique. And based on that, how do we appreciate the fact that maybe the kids are in there to teach us more than we think? That we think our job is to teach them, but what if one of the big things about this is their job is to teach us how to be more connected to the moment, how to be much more involved with who we are authentically, how to make time for things that you really like. I mean, if I were to ask all of us right now, how much time do we make for the things that we really like? We have all of this responsibility and all of these things we've got to get done at the expense of some of the things that add the joy and the happy. And how do we get our happy back? And getting our happy back may be by watching what our kids know before school is so busy chasing it out. So what if we made a pact with our kids? And this is rhetorical pact. Well, maybe. I'll learn from you if you'll learn from me. What do I have to teach you to be healthy and strong and capable in this world? But what do you have to teach me so I can regress a little bit and be a little bit more in tune with loving life instead of being the serious adult? So I was wondering what other dads think about it. I just loved it when I heard it, that we resent our kids. That's what this curious and furious things. We get mad at our kids when they act like kids. And I think part of the reason why we resent it is we really wish we could too. And what if we did? What if we made the commitment that we should be learning from our kids as well?
That's brilliant. Like when you're trying to wake your kid up to go to school, and he says, I just really want to stay in bed. I'm so tired. Don't we sometimes feel the same way? Don't we just walk right in that bed and curl up and say, blow it off or whatever? So, exactly, to be able to join your kid in that moment. I've actually been thinking about an idea for an article for the Good Men Project, something like, 31 things your kids don't really give a damn about. So like the stuff
and
that
neither should we. Yeah.
Obsessing about, like whether the dish, all this. Your kids don't care about that stuff. They just want you to be interacting with them.
Yeah, absolutely, you hit the nail on the head there. Go ahead, Larry.
I totally agree. I think having a child has forced me to grow. I mean, Jay mentioned. He said something earlier in the show, and it was giving our kids. I think it was school versus an education. Is that right, Jay?
Keep going, and maybe I'll remember. Remember, I'm the old guy here, so I'll need a prompting.
But as I look back on everything I've learned in life, in my 39 years, and if I look at where I have grown the most, it's definitely been being a father. And as much as you teach these kids and rear these kids and try to instill, respect, manners, responsibility, work ethic, all this stuff, the thing that I have learned the most is that obviously these kids, they learn mostly by watching. And they learn mostly by example. And one of the things that I had a mentor of mine tell me years ago, the most powerful thing that you'll do as a parent is that you can do as a parent is feel these eyes on you at all times. If you have these eyes on you at all times, or at least you give yourself the sense that these eyes are on you at all times, which really they are, you're going to do things a little bit differently. Then you'll respond instead of react. You'll say one word and maybe not the other. You'll do an act of kindness versus something that maybe could hurt somebody. But what I noticed about having that mentality is it affects greatly all areas of life, not just being a parent. You grow into a better person. I mean, you really, really do. And I think as much as we rear our kids and as much as we raise our kids, we grow the most as a parent.
That's
brilliant.
It's
Yeah.
true, and I think when we look at the moments where we're challenged or we have to deal with things or there's a crisis, those moments get imprinted on kids and they become triggers. So to the degree that we can handle the really difficult moments with competence, with not getting so stressed out or panicking or whatever, then that is what gets imprinted on the child. Oh, you got a flat tire, this thing happened, whatever. You can try to handle that with a kind of competence so that when the kid grows up, he or she doesn't feel that trigger and then get stressed out in the same way.
Absolutely. Yep. That just got me thinking about this program at the school. And one of the things that with the Watchdog program that differs from this dad's program is that he actually has a schedule of when the dads show up. So that there isn't an opportunity, because with the Watchdog program there was no schedule. It was just kind of show up when you feel like showing up. And when you have a schedule, now you have that in your plan, or you know that that's the time that you're to be there, and it kind of puts that it gives the teacher the expectation that you're coming, and it gives you the opportunity to be prepared when you get there, so that you can be more present and you're not just showing up because you're bored or whatever.
I think that's a great point, Chris. For us men, it's something that is so the one thing that can cement us from doing something versus not doing something is scheduling it. And I think a lot of times we miss the boat just by not scheduling something. One of the things that I wrote about in my book was the power of one-on-one time. And the hardest thing about having one-on-one time is looking at your calendar and picking the day to do it with your kid. Once it's on the calendar and once you've picked the day, it's a done deal. The day is already complete. So the hardest thing about doing those things, because if you look at your calendar, whether it's I'm going to go have lunch with my child or I'm going to take my child camping or whatever it is, there is always, did I say always? Always. There's always going to be something else. I mean, there's going to be something that you could work on at work. There's going to be a baseball game that your kid has to be at. There's going to be this, that. There's always going to be something. So the simplest thing to do is to schedule it. I mean, I think that's a great point, Chris.
Well, yeah, because it also gives you that chance to kind of prep yourself mentally for it.
Yep.
I know for me, if I have crap going on at home and I'm like, I got to be at the kid's school in a half hour, it's like, okay, I need to take out a few minutes to do a little bit of meditation and kind of get relaxed so that when I show up to the school, I'm remembering they're kids. let them be kids. Don't let things
from them.
Right. Don't let things get to you and get all irritated and be like, oh my God, all these kids and all this noise and So I have to do a little prep work before I just stop in at the school.
But Chris, you bring up a really good point when you say that. It's that our world has told us what we're supposed to be, and part of I think our whole mission as modern dads is to poke at that definition of what dads are. We go in and we get freaked out by all the noise. We don't. We change diapers. We do work. We cook meals. We go to father-daughter dances. We dance. We never do stuff like that before. Are you kidding me? Dress up for Halloween. And I think some of the things that are getting into our days are things that I think we are truly learning from our kids. We watch our kids and see how much fun they have. And then we look at our life and go, ew, who did this? Who picked this? And maybe, that if we were to relax a little bit, maybe that's another word for modern dad counsel is the relaxed dad counsel. That doesn't mean we are not vigilant in watching for the safety and the accountability and the success of our kids. But what if our approach about it was not to stress into it? They say you're supposed to lean, the book Lean In. Well, maybe we relax in. And yeah, so that let the women lean in. I think that was their book. Let's relax in and see if that could change who we are from the inside out. that we didn't need to be all this stressed out dude all the time, worried and pulling on, it's Atlas, we're carrying the globe on our shoulders. Well, who told us to do that? I think, we have this expectation that we should, and there's something wrong with us if we don't. Or what if we just wrote our own rules? What if we did? And how might we create a pact with our wives or our partners that we need to write our own rules so we can show our kids that they should write their own rules so that life is their definition of life instead of getting all stressed out by all society saying you should look like this and drive this and live here and make this and here's your definition of happy and it looks like the island of St. Thomas, otherwise it's not a vacation. Who has to listen to any of that? So I'll get off my soapbox.
Oh, that's great, and I think to a degree that line of thinking started with this whole be an individual, be yourself, do your own thing, be creative, and that now everybody has the freedom to do that. But unfortunately, what that has become is another expectation that if you're not doing that, there's something wrong with you. If you don't have your own business, your own thing, or whatever, then there's something wrong with you because you're a conformist or whatever it is. So, every movement like that sort of gets co-opted. But I think you're absolutely right. Write your own rules. Do it your own way. If your waistline is X, wear relaxed fit jeans because they fit, for God's sake. Don't try to button yourself into something that doesn't fit.
Oh, I like that's a quotable. Don't try and button yourself into something that doesn't fit. That's got to be in one of your articles, Thomas.
Okay.
He's got a good list up here of articles. I love it.
Great.
Real quick, on every other Thursday night, my wife and her younger daughter Becca have their what's called a special night, and what they do is, because that's the end of the week of the girls being here, and they sleep together, and so for me today I took a me day because I didn't want to go into the evil day job, and I told my wife and Becca last night, I said, hey, you guys take the bedroom, I'm gonna go sleep in Connor's room. And the one thing I kept thinking about when you're talking, Thomas, is that my son's room is just a mess.
Oh,
And I started thinking more and more of going, oh, he's got to pick up this clothes. He's got to, and I'm like, I didn't do it when I was a kid. I was a messy kid too. And I think as of lately, you're talking about relaxing. I've kind of taken a step back going, does it really matter anymore? I mean, yeah, it's a great show of discipline that the kids make their beds and all that, but I'd rather have my son call me on a Saturday night when he's 18 and saying, Dad, I've got myself in a wrong situation, come and get me, versus, hey, that room needs to be clean. You better pick it up. You better dust. You better do. To me, I need to look at the big picture versus, like I said, I was sleeping there last night and woke up early and going, oh my gosh, this is a minefield. I hope I don't step on something. But again, I have to look at the big picture, and I have to tell myself every once in a while to relax as well, as that famous quarterback of the New York or Green Bay Packers has recently said as well.
Yeah, I think being able to relax, and I think being able to relax as a parent. Also,
Sorry.
I'm trying to. Thank
Somebody
you.
tell Jay's dog to relax.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that you have to do as a father is you have to have a sense of humor. And I'm going to tell you guys something here, and I hope I don't offend anyone or offend any of our listeners, but it's something that I swear to God, in the heat of the moment, it has saved my life. My wife and I are big about, we need to have a sense of humor when it comes to our kids, and having an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 1-year-old, we joke about it. We say it's like living in a house full of drunk people all the time, because somebody's always missing a shoe. Somebody always wants McDonald's at 10 o'clock at night. Someone's always missing pants. I mean, it's like it can be mad chaos, and a lot like what Tommy said.
it's like, oh my gosh, it's just mad chaos, and you can literally drive yourself insane if you try to control all that madness, and you can create a rather chaotic environment by always just lashing out at what is going on around you. Sometimes you simply have to smile and reframe it and think of something humorous like that, because in the moment it can really be a lifesaver. I mean, this morning, where the kids are having breakfast, and I have my head down and I'm drinking coffee, and I'm just listening to this conversation of, I mean, no kidding around. My 8-year-old's like, "Hey, do you think your butt cheeks move when you fart?" I mean, part of me was like, hey, we don't talk about that at breakfast. And then there's another part of me, I just shake my head and smile, and I'm like, probably 5 years from now, we'll be talking about very different things at the breakfast table. Maybe I just need to sit back and just talk about this, because why ruin that, So yeah, that's all I had about that.
That's awesome. And that's kind of that letting the kid be a kid.
Yeah,
thing,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
let him be a kid.
Like, stop being a kid. You're supposed to fit in this box and do exactly what I say.
Right.
Hurry up, grow up, be
Right.
unhappy, be uncomfortable,
Right.
be like the rest of us. Really?
Right.
What?
So I can be as happy as you? All right, yeah.
Yeah, it's looking good.
Well, this has been an awesome show. It's getting close to the top of the hour, so we're going to wrap it up. But I want to thank everybody for coming on. This has been awesome. I mean, this is our 4th episode, and I've enjoyed every single one, and I'm getting more and more happy at each episode and how it's been progressing. So, man,
Same here.
did you have something you wanted to add to that, Thomas? I'm sorry.
Well, just real quickly, talking about Larry's point about just putting your head down. Last year, I had the opportunity of being our hockey team's head coach, and I wasn't screaming at the referee. I was having a discussion with the referee, and at
A
this
one-way discussion.
exactly, and at that time of the season, it was towards the end of the season, and my son was on our so-called injured reserve, but he was on the bench, and I said something to the referee, and my son comes out of nowhere and just goes, "Hey, Dad, just calm down. It's only a game." And I looked down, and I lost it. I was just laughing so hard. I'm like, yeah, he's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, what he said.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, he does listen to me. Look at that.
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna stop the broadcast.